So this session is Mythbusters. So I'm going to blast through 10 commonly held myths that I felt that a lot of medical students, or a lot of pre-med students here, trip up on. And I'm just going to blast through it really quickly because I want to have time for you guys to answer and ask me as many questions as you can think of in like 20 minutes. Okay? So I'm going to blast through them. So forgive me. All right, 10 commonly held myths, and then we're going to do some Q&A. Myth 1, I have to study science. I think I already broke that down. You don't have to study science. You study what you're passionate about. That's what you'll do the best in. And we think about, I think medical school, when you think about, you hear medical schools say, look, we are committed to diversity. And me being on the diversity committee, I'm on lots of committees. I'm like super involved in the school. It's ridiculous. I was on student council. I was all these other things. I'm on the financial aid committee and the admissions committee, all these committees. I like this stuff. But anyway, you have to study science. So we think about diversity, and I think most medical schools think about diversity in a way that is more nuanced than what I think most would think about. They think, oh, this is a black person. Or, oh, it's a Latino person. And that's what you think about when you think about diversity, but that's not what we're thinking about. We're thinking about that too, in a way, but we're thinking about like, where is this person's socioeconomic status? Where did this person go to undergrad? Did this person go to a school like Columbia where we get 1 trillion applications? Or is this the only person from Mountain State University that applied? That person brings diversity. That person brings diversity from a white male from the foothills of West Virginia, brings a lot of diversity to the school. It really does. And one of the things that we think about that brings diversity is undergraduate major. Brings diversity. So we have a guy in our class, a white guy who went to Duke. Dad was a physician. Studied African American history, and that was like a kind of diverse thing. Like, this guy studies African American, a white guy studies African American history. That adds diversity to our school. He brings a different perspective than I think a lot of other people do, and so that benefits him on his application. One girl studied at the Juilliard. I talk about her a lot. She was like an extreme ballerina. So she studied at the Juilliard and all that, and that brought a lot of diversity. We think about these things. And so one of the things I think I want you to take home out of this whole process is that the more diverse you can make yourself, even though you don't maybe not feel that way, you're already bringing a level of diversity coming from here. Okay, because a lot of people are not getting into medical school. So you're already bringing in an aspect of diversity. But think about the other ways you can diversify yourself and make yourself unique. Because they want what we want in admissions. We want to find somebody to fit something that we don't have any of those people do. And that's really helpful because what we're doing is team-based things in medicine. And every study on team-based anything has shown that teams function better when there's a diverse group of people and diverse thought process. When you talk about, I go to these hackathons at MIT where we hack medicine. I'm in part of a group called Hack Medicine. So we come up, we get an issue. We'll have something like, we need to figure out how to deliver vaccines in Tibet or whatever. And there's this one problem that's gone wrong, and how do we fix this? And so we'll have engineers, we'll have scientists, we'll have accountants, we'll have finance people, we'll have logistics people, we'll have doctors, we'll have all these people there. We basically lock ourselves in a room and eat pizza and figure a solution out and deliver it, in 24 hours, less than overnight, a hackathon. So everyone knows that these things help problem solving, and so medical schools have realized this, and they want somebody who is different because you bring something in terms of problem solving. So that's what people go. All right, med schools only care about GPA and MCAT. You might know this. I might be thinking myself. All right. So no, it's not. We don't want nerds. We want people who are competent and who will be caring, compassionate physicians. That's what we want. I think the same goes for dental school. I think the same goes for PE school. I think the same goes for pharmacy school. It's not all about GPA and MCAT. Yes, that tells us that you have the ability to do the work at school. But that's all it tells us. And there's a lot more to being a doctor than that. Whatever kind of doctor you end up being, whether it's a pharmacist or a dentist or whatever, or a medical doctor. So anyway, next, myth number 3. The more extracurricular activities, I think I already covered that, the better. False. Okay? Not more is better. Better is better. Okay? Do something different. The best thing you can do is create something new. Show that you're dedicated to something. Do something for years. Even if you just do one thing, do that for 4 years and show that you really cared about that. That looks better than doing someone who did 20 things and it was like 5 different things every year and whatever. It really looks better for somebody to show that they were committed to something. And so try to do that. All right. 4. So going to a school like ODU hurts you in the application process. I already covered this. We salivate at the sight of somebody from a school like ODU. We do. We want you at Harvard. They want you at Hopkins. They want you at Columbia. You are actually in a fantastic position to go to these places, being here, as long as you have a good plan. Because you, just by virtue that you add so much in the way of diversity, you might be the first person that's ever gone to one of these schools, from here, as far as going to medical school. Which I was the first person to go to Harvard Medical School from ODU. Like there never been another person, which is crazy, as long as ODU has been around. And so they really valued that, and that helped me get in. All right, so you're too old. No, you're not. I have a friend. One of my good friends is, how old is he, 41? 41, and just started med school this year. So, I don't see anybody in here who's 41. Doug.
I wish.
There you go. So you're not too old. Myth. All right. You must take the must. And I would say you mustn't take the MCAT until you are ready to take the MCAT. Period. Full stop. Do not take the MCAT until you are ready to take the MCAT. Full stop. People will tell you you must take it early. That is not true. I took it on the very last day that it was given that year. In fact, when I signed up to take it, I signed up so damn late that the only places I could take it were luckily Charleston, West Virginia, and Anchorage, Alaska. So of course I drove to Charleston, West Virginia. I stayed overnight, I drove 7 hours, and I did it. But that is not true. It just is not true. You need to take it when you're ready. And the MCAT is not one of those things that you can just be like, oh, well, I did poorly on it the first time. I'll just take it again, and my second score will just knock out my first score. No. Doesn't work like that. And we see every single score every time you ever take it. Full end story. That's it. Take it when you're ready. And I'll talk to you guys at the MCAT session about how to evaluate and assess if you're ready. Take it when you're ready. Don't listen to anybody who pressures you. I don't give a damn if you already paid for it and mom and dad are like, oh, it's $300. I've already paid for it. Like, I'm sorry. You want to throw good money after bad money? It's a bad idea. If you're not ready, waste the $300. Because you wasted this whole, however many years you've been spending trying to get into medical school. If you go there and you get a 12 on it, you really screwed yourself. And you have a lot. You can get back from that, because I have friends who have gotten back from it. But I'm telling you, it's hard. It's hard to get back from that. So you just need to take it when you're ready. I can't say that enough. Joining an honor society is important. Myth. All right. So I say that with a caveat. If you have professional honor societies, like you're in a science honor society or whatever, I think that helps. If there's a biochemistry honor society and you're a biochemistry major, I think those are good ones to be a part of. I think like Golden Key or whatever it is, I don't know what it's even called, or there are a lot of other honor societies that basically the only requirement is to be like a 3-2 student. Full stop. That doesn't show anybody anything. You pay them $100, you get a nice cord. $100. This is what? 102. You could have paid your whole application process with that. It's great. So I remember I stood up as the valedictorian of the school at the time. And I didn't have, and a bunch of people had all these robes. I had 0 robes. I had not one single robe hanging from my neck. And I'm not saying that I am not averse to doing the Honor Society thing. I'm just saying that it's not, you shouldn't do it because you think it'll look good on your application. You should do it for other reasons. I'm not saying they're not worth doing if that's what you want to do and you really feel like that'll make you part of a club. You know, if there is, so in medical school, there's this thing called AOA, Alpha Omega Alpha, which is an honor society for medical. It's very hard to get to be in the top 10% of your class. Harvard doesn't have one because they consider everyone AOA. But most medical schools have them. So if I was there, I'd want to be part of that AOA. I would. If I was at another school that had that, you know, and most schools do, I'd want to be part of that. But, you know, most of these things, let's face it, they're just like, I thought about starting one up. I'm not even joking. I was like, look, let me start up this honor society and just collect paychecks from people who want to go abroad. I was thinking, these people are brilliant. They have duped everybody into thinking you get this nice thing and they'll, congratulations, you have qualified. And I'm just like, oh. So no, I didn't have any, and I really don't think that they're necessary. There are some that so we weren't part of the public health honor society. I would have joined that one. If that was around when I would have done it. Because it's a professional honor society, they have an annual conference. It's a real organization where people in public health are part of it. It's not just like, oh, we send out a gold cord honor society. Okay? All right. With a caveat. All right, so you must apply early. Goes the same way. So you mustn't apply until you are ready to apply. Again, it's not, there are some schools with rolling admissions. That is true. I applied, again, I took the MCAT the last day and I applied that cycle, so obviously I didn't apply until late. It's like 2 days before the application final deadline was, which I don't recommend. I don't recommend that. I'm not saying that's the right way to do it. What I'm saying was I wasn't ready, so because I was a procrastinator at the time, I just, I was trying to get everything perfect, and so I waited until I had all that. I wanted to have my letter from my faculty member at Johns Hopkins. I wanted to have all those things. And it worked out for me because most schools, if you're a good applicant, if you're a great applicant, you're going to get in. I mean, I applied really late in October. I applied in October. Most people, they say, oh, if you apply in July, you're late. Blah, blah, blah. You'll hear that from people. I applied in October. I was into 15 medical schools before Christmas, and it was not a problem. So it was not a problem. I was within 2 weeks, I was in the UVA. I was like, thank God. I don't have to worry about it. I'm being a doctor. But, because I was starting to believe the hype. And there are a lot of schools that are also not rolling admissions. So you have to look at where you're trying to go, and Harvard's one of those. They don't make any decisions until they've interviewed every person they're going to interview, period. They don't make a single decision. So, so there's that process. So it doesn't really help you to apply all the time. That being said, if you can be ready early, and your MCAT, you can be ready for the MCAT early, and you can be ready to apply early, you should do it. But you should be ready. That's it. You should be ready. If you're not ready, it's not worth it. It's a waste of your time. You're not gaining anything by being the next person that doesn't get an interview. You can be the first person that gets declined. or you can be the last person that gets offered an interview. What do you think is going to be better? I mean, it should be common sense, but for whatever reason, a lot of people don't get it. I already talked about this. Undergraduate research is not important. That is a myth. 81% of people who matriculate into medical school did undergraduate research. Period. All right. Did poorly on the MCAT, take it again. Your second score replaced your first. False. I already told you about that. That's it. Those are the 10 myths. Now I know, you don't know show of hands, but a lot of you believed a lot of these things. Some of these things before you walked in this room. You believed those to be true. That's why I did this session. So, with that being said, we have 15 minutes. Yeah, 15 minutes to get through question and answer regarding this. And so there were a couple of people that came up to the front. So if you were one of those people that came to the front, I wanted you guys to raise your hands first because I sent you a link. Okay, go.
Yes, sort of a matter of research. If you were involved in a project, it turns out you found out from researchers that your work actually got published from your aid. Yeah. Does that still count as
Absolutely, absolutely. My research did not get published. That particular research I did not get published. It did not hurt me at all. Yes.
As far as the finding out who offers the undergraduate research, do you go to your department head of your major or?
So we're gonna talk. There's a little session. We're doing in 10 minutes. After this is done, I think the next one is undergraduate research. I think the next one is undergraduate research. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that.
And then the other quick question is the book that you were discussing earlier. Do they give multiple copies to the students at ODU? Or do you
So the book, they give it to the pre-med office for free. They can order it for free. If you order it online, I want to say the online copy is $15. If you want the physical hard copy book that you can highlight, it's like $25. It's not crazy. It is well worth every penny, and it's a thick book. I mean, it's like there's a lot of information. It's like the best $25 book you've ever purchased in your life. So no question, seriously, if you want to become a doctor, it is true.
For undergraduate research, is it important to get it in before you apply, or can you make a stipulation saying that you're going to be doing it in the fall?
Yeah, so I think that is better than not doing it, that you're going to be doing in the fall, but I think that showing that, because we want to talk about it at your interview. We want to talk about what you researched. We want to understand like what your understanding is of it. I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of people have never heard that this is super important. And you're graduating, and it's terrible. It is. It is a tragedy. I don't think it's not okay, but it's true. It just is true. So, I mean, it's a personal decision. I don't think there's any harm in applying, and if you get rejected, you've done the undergraduate research and you've done it. I'm not saying you're going to get rejected because of that either. I'm just saying you have to be part of that 19%. And it's a lot harder to be part of 19% than a part of 81%. That's all I'm saying. So I would try to get as much research done. You don't have to do a huge thing. You can go and be like, look, I can give you 2 hours on Wednesday afternoons in your lab. And people will be happy to help you. I mean, have you, seriously. So, you just have to figure out how you're going to do it. Who else was? I know you already. Who else? Somebody over here who came up, you walked up there.
I'm pretty sure you already answered it. Like, if it's somebody else's, it's obviously somebody else's research. Like, I am working in the immunology lab here. It was his project. I just do the work.
Yeah. You've done research. Yeah. You're part of the project. I mean, your name should be on the manuscript if it gets, published, I think, because you're doing a lot of the work. Yeah, I mean, for sure, that's research. And you should be there discussing in your journal club and all that, discussing kind of like, you should have a good understanding of what this whole project is about. It's hard when you don't know complex immunology. It's very challenging, but that's when you have to just take the initiative and just teach yourself some immunology by reading an immunology textbook, and you'll be there and have those people in that lab help explain it to you. So, because that was a challenge for me. I did immunology research as well, in the allergy and immunology. It was I had never taken immunology class. I was like, what the hell are they talking about? So, but by the end, I had a good understanding, and I was able to talk about it intelligently, and that's what's most important.
I know for my internship, I worked with the Global Health Office, and she gave me a project with creating like a knowledge base program for the. Does that count, even though it's not like research? But is it like?
So that's more of a community engagement project.
Okay.
We really, I have to underscore the research, because it's just having a question that you study academically, whether it's reviewing literature, whether it's actually conducting an experiment. There are multiple different kinds of research. It could be data analysis, whatever. It could be retrospective studies where you're just you're pulling data that's already been kind of collected and you're analyzing that. A lot of things are done that way. Outcomes data, super easy to do research, and you can do it in your pajamas at home. I plan on doing plenty on the beach here this summer, not a problem. But you can do it from your computer at home. But it needs to be kind of answering a question, which makes it research.
So I tried to get into undergrad research. This semester I tried to in the fall to get in, and I couldn't find anyone to sponsor me.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that next. It's right after this.
Okay.
So that's the next piece. We'll talk all about undergraduate research. Yes.
Can I throw a caveat to number 8 for the apply early?
Yeah.
At least do your transcripts here at ODU, because they take 30 days to send them. And if you're done semester abroad, it says semester abroad about 5 pages after the class that you got credit for. And AAMC has to talk to the school you did it at for the office of semester abroad, which can take up to 20 or 30 days.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. It applies to more than just the transcripts. So when I say don't apply early, you should start the process of like going through the application process and filling out everything. What I'm saying is clicking that submit button. You should start that part early because you need to start like your personal statement. It takes a long time to do a personal statement. Don't underestimate that it takes like 4 months to do a personal statement if you're going to do it right and have the right amount of people, give them the appropriate amount of time to look at things. We'll talk about that in that personal statement workshop, but you know, you should start the process. But what I'm saying is you can't apply until all the ducks in a row. That you take the MCAT. For most people, if you're taking the MCAT late, that's the big holdup. The MCAT is the big holdup. If you've taken the MCAT early, you should apply early. You should just figure out how to get all that stuff done. Unless there's like something big kind of like holding up. But even if there's a letter of recommendation, you can send that letter of recommendation in late. That's fine. And they can add that to your application. The MCAT's the biggest holdup. But, so that's what I was saying there for when you should really start the process. Does that answer your question?
On the MCAT, I know I've been told by different people that you can actually, you're ready to send your application set for your MCAT. Like, I'm not ready for the MCAT, but I've been preparing to take the whole summer and focus on it. So I signed up to take the MCAT August 21st. So I'm ready for everything else in the application. They said that you can go ahead and send in your application, and then they'll receive your score.
That's right. So
Which would you rather wait?
no, that's right. So you submit it, and then but the thing is that when you submit your application, the only caveat is when you submit your application, that's a great way to do it. That's the way I do it. You submit your application kind of. No, I didn't do it that way. I waited until after I got my score back, but as I wasn't sure, I didn't have the right feeling. So what I would suggest was to take the MCAT. The day after you take the MCAT, because those scores take a while to come back. You say to yourself, give yourself an honest assessment. Did I do well on that test? Did I do what I need to do? Because once you submit, it goes to the schools. Do you know what I mean? And so then they're going to be making decisions based off of that. Especially if you're taking the MCAT early, you could have time to take it again that semester, and you don't want them to make decisions off the first score if you're going to take it another time in that cycle. You see what I'm saying? So it's a little bit person dependent. But but if you feel like you did well, so what I would recommend for everybody, just as a painting with a broad brush, is that make sure you do well, and then click submit, and then the MCAT, because they won't send anything to the school until your MCAT goes in anyway. So then the MCAT and your validation of your application, your transcript validation, all that can happen kind of in tandem, and then it can go in. That's what I would recommend doing, unless you just know you're going to like kill the MCAT. I mean, if you know that. Do it. I mean, I did. Look, there are people who do that, and it's amazing. I love it, but I didn't feel that way about STEP or the MCAT.
Okay, so I'm confused now about what this means. Like, so if you take the MCAT the first time and you don't do well, and then you take it a second time and you do well, does that first one hurt you?
It hurts you, still. But it would be, but the thing is if you, so say if you were if she did what she said, and she took it, and say she didn't do well in the MCAT, they would make a decision before you ever had an opportunity to take the MCAT again. And then you can't reapply that cycle. They can reject you before you ever had the chance to take the MCAT again. So if you did it, and you said you took it in May, and you said, oh, I didn't do well, and so you're like, I'm not going to submit my application, I'll take the MCAT again in 2 months. So then you take it in July, and then you submit, then they're basing it off of July and May tests. But they're basing it on July and May tests, so if you do it better in July, you have a better chance of getting in. If you totally taint it in May, you're going to get rejected, and then you're going to have to apply next year. Even if you take it in July again, you still have to wait a whole year to apply again if you don't get in anywhere. So that's why I say that. Does that make sense? That does make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but how does it hurt you? How badly does it hurt you if they see a
Oh, terrible.
score?
No, it is. It's bad. I mean, it really is. Especially, and the reason I say it is because some people, they do a mediocre score. It's not really that bad. It's like terrible, and then you kill it. Let's say you got a 12 and then a 40, then they'll be like, oh, I don't know what happened with 12. But that never happens, first of all. Hardly ever happens. And secondly, if you get something that you feel like it's not as good as I wanted it, like it's a 25. Let's say it's a 25. To me, a 25 is not as good as you wanted it to be. and then you take it again, you get a 27, you're like screwed. Because it's like, now it's like this is as well as this person can do. Like it wasn't just a bad day. It would be better just to have had 127. Because that 27 could be a bad day and that's highly variable, like maybe tomorrow she get it on a 31, and there's always that doubt. And so we go off of that doubt and we say, oh, well, maybe it was just a bad testing day. But if you have a 25 and a 27 in consecutive, in close succession, then we're like, well, that's what she can do. So it is different.
So kind of going off of that, with having a lower score and then you having a high GPA and bouncing out.
In a way. So I would say that the reason I wanted to have a 4.0 because I wasn't sure I was going to do well in MCAT. And having a great GPA and great letters of recommendation can overcome some level of poor MCAT. You know, it's variable how poor the MCAT can be, but it certainly can. That being said, I would just do as well on both as I could. But yes, that's one of the biggest reasons to get good grades is because really, if you have excellent grades in the MCAT, they're like, well, maybe he's just a slow reader, maybe he's, whatever. And it's like, maybe he's not good at standardized tests. Clearly, he got all A's in college. He's like, So, go ahead.
What about voided scores? Like I took the MCAT far before I was ready, probably really dumb. It's like a pre-test before I even took organic chemistry, physics.
Yeah, we don't care about the voided
Does it really not get graded?
Yeah, it's voided. It doesn't even we don't even.
So they don't even see it?
No,
oh.
no, it's voided. No, we don't. We don't know that you did that. Yeah.
How do you know that?
You can do it at the end and say, I don't want to
They
submit
can
this
decide
test.
right to
Yeah.
click yes or no.
Okay.
Does the same apply for GRE for those who want to go to PA school? Do you know?
The GRE is a little bit more interesting because you actually get the score like right away, but you do have the option to avoid it. You do. You absolutely do
But
have
I
the
mean,
option to avoid it. Oh, to
second
take
chance.
it? So the GRE, I think it depends on the program. It's not so universal as med school is because the PA programs are so variable, and actually the scope of being a physician's assistant. Let me talk about physician's assistants for a second. All right. So this is I just want to say this because a lot of people. So I came in before I even applied to ODU to come. I said to myself, I was talking to my buddy who's a third-year medical student at MUSC now, who was a friend of mine from a long time ago. We both decided to make this career change and become physicians. But at the time, we were talking about should we do it. We were actually talking about becoming pharmacists. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll be a dentist. And a lot of that had to do with I didn't believe I could be a doctor. And he didn't believe he could be a doctor. And we got into this kind of back and forth about this is what we're going to do. And then we're like, oh, this would be awesome to be a pharmacist. We convinced ourselves we love being pharmacists. And let me tell you, I would not love being a pharmacist. There is no way I would love being a pharmacist. But I like the idea of being a pharmacist at the time. But a lot of that came from my own doubt in myself that I could be a doctor. So here's my thing. PAs have made physicians' lives excellent. Streamline our lives. Can't say anything bad about PAs. My problem with people going into PA school from undergrad, getting a 4-year degree, and deciding that that's what they want to do, is I don't understand the impetus. And I'm just going to say it like this. If you're a person that wants, because PAs in Virginia, it was where you work because you can't transfer PA degrees the way you can doctorate degrees. You can't go get board certified in California and go practice if you went to school here. And see, it's a different scope of practice everywhere. It's not very universal. So that's a problem. Nurse practitioners, you can. PAs, you cannot. So PA school is interesting because I know a lot of people choose to go into it. But PAs here essentially do pretty much the same job as a physician. They just get a sign off from a doctor like I do as a medical student. I go in, I see a patient, I work them up, I come with a diagnosis, I come with a plan, I say I'm going to do this. I talk to the boss and say, this is what I'm going to do, and he says, great. And it happens. But I'm doing the same job as he's doing on this other patient. And you're doing that for a lot less money. And for only 1 more year of training, you could be doing the same job for a lot more money. So I never, for me, understand why the 1 year of education, I just don't understand the difference. But go ahead.
What about lifestyle? Because doctors work a lot more.
Doctors tend to work a lot more, not because they have to work a lot more, but because they desire to work a lot more. So for instance, a PA in the emergency department works actually a lot more than the MDs in the emergency department, because an MD in the emergency department works 10 to, I know because I'm going to emergency medicine, 10 to 12 10-hour shifts a month. Period. 10 to 12 10-hour shifts a month. So you might only work 10 days a month, 10 hours a day. That's not a bad lifestyle. You make $350,000, and the PA that's doing the same job as you in the emergency department is making $100,000 working 40 hours a week, and I'm working 30. It's actually not, it's not compatible, and PAs who work in that scope, it doesn't, I'm just going to say that, like, I feel like a lot of people go into it because they're like, oh, maybe, you know, it's just like, oh, I have to go and be a doctor, and it's going to be so hard, and I don't have what it takes. Well, if you don't have what it takes to be a doctor, you don't have what it takes to be a PA. It's the same thing. You have to learn the same stuff. You have to learn the same stuff. There is no real tangible difference. They go to 3 years, we go to 4 years. What do I do my 4th year? I drink and I apply for jobs. I mean, so really there's no difference in the education, just the difference in the degree. I mean, there is a little bit of a difference. I'm being a little oversimplifying, but I just want to encourage you that, like, if you're going to go into PA school, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. If you're going to go into PA school, I want you to do it for the right reason. Don't do it because you don't believe you can do it. And then in residency, even as a resident, you're making not maybe as much as exactly what a PA is making, but it's only for a couple of years. And you like way more than make up for that in the back end. And residency, believe me, residency is just a job. It's a job. You get education on the job. It's on the job education. It's not, there's you have tests, you have things like that, but really you're doing pretty much the same thing as a PA is doing all day. You're managing patients, you're doing that, you're working on the floors. And then at the end, you might have a couple of extra responsibilities, like, you have to give a journal club, or you have to do this or that, but it's not that different. You're practicing physician, basically. Go ahead.
I was under the impression as well that PAs are more hands-on and doctors do more research than hands-on.
Well, I mean, there are some doctors that are research, but I mean, certainly, like, there are a lot of clinicians that's what they don't do any research. So I think the preponderance of doctors are clinicians. They don't do research. The vast majority of doctors in the country don't do research at all. They might have done it in college and in residency, but they don't. When they're practicing, most people practice. There are a certain amount of people who become professors of medicine that do research, and those are people who are academic faculty. Yes.
I want to go to medical school, but I've been told to do PA instead because it's more flexible and that you can change where you want to work as opposed to, like, you pick your residency and that's what you do.
Yeah, well, not really. There's an aspect to that. So as a PA, if you work 10 years in an emergency room, and then all of a sudden you want to go into obstetrics as a PA, you're going to have a hard time finding a job. Why would I hire you, who has no experience in obstetrics, when I could hire another PA who has the experience in obstetrics? And they're putting a lot more PAs out. And so there's an aspect of that. It's true, like, if you want to do it as a doctor, you really do have to go through a whole nother residency if you want to switch your job. But, like, so that's true. That's true. If you really think that in your career you're going to change that many times. But the other thing about PA is that I think PAs are fantastic, but you're staying in as this kind of mid-level provider or a lower level provider, and you stay there. And if you're a physician and you go and you work at a hospital, like, if you want to be the chief medical officer, you can get there. If you want to be the head of a department, you can get there. You're going to move up. You're going to become partner. You're going to become, a chief of a department. You're going to become whatever. And, like, you don't have that upward mobility. You're stuck when you're a PA. You're, like, in that glass ceiling, like, it's just there. That's what you're going to do. You're going to do the role of a PA. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great job. I would love to. I mean, seriously, it's a great job. What I'm saying is you do very similar, really almost the exact same thing is what a doctor does. You might not see as complex of cases. The really complex cases get triaged to an MD. But you're going to do the same type of thing a doctor would do for this patient and get paid a third of the salary, which I think is crazy. To want to do just, I think it's crazy just to want to do that kind of off the top without ever giving the other a shot. My own personal opinion. Sorry. No, I mean that. Seriously, I work with PAs. I love it. I hate that they make a third of what the next person next to them doing the same job works. It makes you bitter. It really does. And then you're in there and there's a patient that's like, I don't want to see a PA. I want to see a doctor. You know, and like they would rather see me, Dr. Taylor, in 12 months. They'd rather see me. Right? I walk in, I'm Dr. Taylor, blah, blah. This is my first day in the emergency department. And then there's this like senior PA who's been doing this for 20 years, who knows everything. And the person would still rather see me. It's ridiculous. And so, I mean, I think there's a lot, I couldn't handle it. I don't think I could handle it. Because I would feel upset about those kinds of things. But anyway, I just encourage you, if you really think that you would like that kind of job, you would like being a physician. And so I don't see why you wouldn't just do the extra year and be a physician. My own personal perspective. Feel free to disagree.
You talked a little bit about getting a lower MCAT score and then getting a better one. Could you just talk a little bit about, like, say you had a low GPA for a bit and then boosted it up from there?
Yeah. First of all, that goes a lot easier than me in med school. Because GPA, usually, first of all, at the end, you're taking harder courses. If you can do well in the harder courses, it tells us you could have done well in the easier courses, which is at the end. A lot of people do that. Because you know what? You're 18 years old. For a lot of people, you're like walking into college, like, every girl you see or every guy you see, and you're like, you want to hang out, you want to do this, you're like free, you're not under your parents' thumb anymore. That's an experience that like pretty much anybody can identify with. And so as long as you get it together, I think that can almost be like a plus. Like you really didn't have it together, and then you really got it together. You went from like a 1.6 to like a 4.0, and you're showing us you're dedicated. It's almost like that 1.6 never existed. And we'll talk about how to do well in college later, but let me see how much time we have left. All right, we got to get through these two things. Is that okay? Can we move on to research?